I was sent to the frozen north to marry a woman. That was the agreement. A prince for a princess, a life for a peace treaty. I was prepared for a cold, loveless marriage to the Ice Maiden. But I was wrong. I didn't fall for the princess. I fell for the monster standing at her gate, the warlord who swore to kill me, but became the only fire that could keep me alive. Chapter 1. The Ice Maiden's Guard. I was sent to a marriage. That is what the scrolls said. I was to be the bridge between the Sunlands and the frozen north. I was betrothed to Lady Lyra, the Ice Maiden, the sister of the Warlord. I had seen her portrait once, a woman of pale beauty and sharp eyes. I prepared myself to be a dutiful husband. I prepared myself to bed a woman made of winter. I was sent to marry a princess. I never expected to fall in love with the monster standing at her gate. The wind howled like a dying wolf as my carriage ascended the final pass. My breath was a cloud of white in the dim cabin. Even the magical heating stones the southern mages had packed for me had turned to gray, useless pebbles hours ago. "We are here, Your Highness," the coachman called out. His voice shook. I looked out the frosted window. The warlord's fortress rose from the rock like a black tooth jutting out of a white jaw. It was terrifying. It was a place of war, not a place for a wedding. The carriage stopped. I waited for the fanfare. I waited for the trumpets that usually heralded a royal arrival. There was only silence, and the crunch of heavy boots on snow. The door was wrenched open. I stepped out, my velvet cloak fluttering uselessly in the gale. I looked around for my bride. I looked for Lady Lyra. Instead, I found a wall of black iron and fur. Standing at the base of the carriage steps was a man who made the surrounding mountains look small. He was massive, his armor scarred from 1,000 blades. He wore no helmet, revealing a face that was brutally handsome. Sharp cheekbones, a scar slicing through his left eyebrow, and eyes the color of a frozen ocean. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated loathing. "You," he rumbled. The sound vibrated in my chest. "You are the Southern Prince." I straightened my spine, trying to stop my knees from knocking together. "I am Prince Elian. I am here for my betrothed, Lady Lyra." The giant stepped forward. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees just by his proximity. He towered over me, blocking out the pale sun. "My sister," he spat the word, "is preparing for the feast. She does not have time to greet a fragile thing like you." He reached out. I flinched, expecting a blow. Instead, his massive gauntleted hand grabbed my chin, forcing my head up. He examined my face like one might examine a horse at an auction. "Pretty," he sneered. "Weak. You will not survive the consummation night, little prince. The women of the north are strong. You look like you would shatter if a wind blew too hard." "I am stronger than I look," I lied, my voice trembling. The man's eyes narrowed. His thumb brushed my cheek. Zap. A strange spark jumped between us. He froze. I saw his pupils dilute, swallowing the blue iris. For a split second, the sneer vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion. He dropped his hand as if burned. "I am General Kaelen," he said, his voice rougher now. "Warlord of this keep, and Lyra's guardian. If you hurt her, if you disappoint her, I will mount your head on a pike." "A warm welcome," I muttered, hugging my cloak tighter. "May I go inside? Or is your plan to freeze the groom to death before the wedding?" Kaelen stared at me for a long moment. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he clenched his jaw. "Take him to the East Tower," Kaelen barked at the guards. "Keep him away from Lyra until the feast. I don't want her seeing this shivering mess." He turned on his heel and stormed away. As he walked, I swear the snow melted beneath his boots, only to freeze instantly into black ice. Chapter 2. The coldest room. They put me in a tower room that was clearly designed for a prisoner, not a prince. The stone walls leaked cold air. The window was a narrow slit without glass. There was a bed, but the furs on it smelled of dust and old neglect. I sat on the edge of the mattress, my teeth chattering so hard my jaw ached. This is a mistake, I thought. They don't want peace. They want to humiliate me. I thought of Lady Lyra. Was she as cold as her brother? Was she as cruel? I was supposed to spend my life with her. The thought made my stomach twist. I had never been with a woman, let alone a warrior woman of the North. The courtiers in the South whispered that my preferences lay elsewhere. But duty was duty. Hours passed. The sun set, and the room became a tomb. I wrapped myself in every fur available, but the chill was unnatural. It wasn't just weather. It was magic. The ancient frost of the fortress was seeping into me, dulling my mind, slowing my heart. My vision began to blur. My faint sun magic flickered in my chest, a dying ember trying to fight a blizzard. I am going to die here, I realized with a detached calm. I am going to freeze to death on my wedding eve. The heavy oak door creaked open. I couldn't even turn my head. I was curled in a tight ball, my eyelashes frozen together. Heavy footsteps crossed the stone floor. A shadow fell over me. Pathetic. It was Kaelen. I tried to speak, to tell him to go to hell, but only a wheeze came out. The mattress dipped. Kaelen sat beside me. He wasn't wearing his armor anymore. He was in a loose shirt, his chest exposed to the freezing air as if it were a summer breeze. "My sister refuses to see you," he said conversationally, as if I weren't dying. "She says she will not marry a corpse. She sent me to check if you were still breathing." He reached out and touched my forehead. His hand was cold, but compared to the air in the room, it felt solid. "You are burning," he whispered. "No, not fever. Your core." He frowned, leaning closer. "Why is your magic trying to burn you?" To warm," I stuttered. Kaelen went silent. He looked at my trembling body. He looked at the frost on my eyelashes. "The southern blood is weaker than I thought," he grumbled. He stood up. "I should let you die. It would save us the trouble of the wedding." I closed my eyes, accepting it. But he didn't leave. "Damn it," he cursed. Suddenly, I was hoisted into the air. Kaelen scooped me up, furs and all, holding me against his chest. "Where?" I mumbled. "Shut up," he growled. "If you die, the South attacks. I'm not starting a war tonight because you forgot to bring a coat." He kicked the door open and carried me out. Chapter 3. The Warlord's Bed. He didn't take me to an infirmary. He didn't take me to a warm guest room. He carried me up a winding staircase, past guards who quickly averted their eyes, and into a massive chamber at the top of the keep. It was his room. I knew it instantly. It smelled like him. Pine, steel, and that strange ozone scent of a coming storm. A fire roared in the hearth, but even that wasn't enough to banish the chill of the castle. Kaelen walked to the massive bed, a sprawling thing made of black wood and heaped with white wolf pelts, and dumped me onto it. He began stripping my boots off. "What are you doing?" I gasped, trying to pull my foot back. "Your feet are purple," he snapped. "Do you want to lose your toes before the wedding dance?" Lyra hates clumsy dancers. He stripped my outer layers with efficient, rough movements. I was too weak to fight him. Soon I was down to my thin tunic and trousers. Kaelen hesitated. He stood by the bed, looking down at me. The firelight danced over his scars, making them look like rivers of shadow on his skin. "The fire isn't enough," he muttered, mostly to himself. "The curse is strong tonight." The curse? I whispered. He looked at me, his eyes guarded. The Warlord's burden. I draw the cold into myself to keep the past frozen. It means nothing can warm this room. Nothing can warm me. He looked at me, shivering on his bed. Except, he trailed off. He remembered the spark in the courtyard. Kaelen sat on the edge of the bed. Give me your hand. I reached out, my fingers trembling. He took my hand in his. The reaction was instantaneous. Heat. It wasn't just warmth. It was a rush of golden liquid fire that started in my fingertips and shot up his arm. Kaelen gasped, his head throwing back. The tension that held his shoulders tight suddenly snapped. What is that? He breathed, looking at our joined hands. My magic, I whispered. It's trying to balance you. Kaelen looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time, he didn't see a weak southern prince. He saw water in a desert. He saw oxygen. He moved with predatory speed. He swung his legs up and climbed into the bed. What? General, I am betrothed to your sister, I cried out, trying to scoot away. My sister is asleep, Kaelen growled. He grabbed my waist and hauled me into the center of the bed. And you are freezing. This is medical. Medical? I squeaked as he pulled me against his chest. Quiet. He wrapped his arms around me. He was immense. I felt like a doll in the grip of a bear. But the moment our bodies aligned, chest to chest, legs tangling, the magic exploded. It was a physical sensation of relief so intense I almost moaned. And Kaelen. The terrifying warlord buried his face in the crook of my neck. He let out a long, shuddering groan that vibrated through my entire skeleton. Warm, he slurred, sounding drunk. Gods, you are so warm. He tightened his grip, trapping me against him. One of his heavy legs hooked over mine, pinning me down. General? Kaelen, he corrected, his voice muffled against my skin. Call me Kaelen when you're in my bed. I shouldn't be in your bed. Would you rather be in Lyra's? He asked, lifting his head slightly. His blue eyes were hooded, dark with a sudden, confusing intensity. She is cold, Elian. Her skin is as cool as marble. She would not appreciate this heat. She would hate it. He moved his hand up my back, under my tunic, his fingers splaying over my spine, skin to skin. The sensation was electric. My heart hammered against his ribs. But Kaelen whispered, leaning in until his lips brushed my ear. I have been cold for 20 years. Do not tell me to let go. Not yet. My resolve crumbled. The heat was too good. The feeling of being held by this dangerous, powerful man was overwhelming. Just for tonight, I whispered. To survive the cold. Kaelen hummed, a low sound of victory. Just for tonight. But as he settled down, pulling the furs over us, his hand didn't leave my skin. He held me not like a guest, and certainly not like a brother-in-law. He held me like a dragon hoarding gold. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the wind howl outside, feeling the steady, heavy thud of the warlord's heart against my back. I was here to marry Lyra. I was here to be a dutiful husband. But as Kaelen's breathing evened out, and his thumb stroked a possessive rhythm against my hip, I knew with a terrifying certainty, the wedding was going to be a problem. Chapter 4. The morning after waking up in the warlord's bed was a disorientation of the senses. The first thing I registered was the smell, not the stale, freezing dust of the tower room, but musk, cedar, and the deep, rich scent of a man. The second thing was the heat. I was sweating. In the heart of the frozen north, I was actually sweating. I tried to stretch, but a heavy weight pinned me to the mattress. Kaelen's arm was thrown across my waist, heavy as an iron bar. His face was buried in the pillow right next to my head, his dark hair messy, softening the brutal angles of his face. He was asleep, deeply, heavily asleep. I lay there for a moment, heart pounding. The sun was streaming through the high windows, illuminating the scars on his bare shoulders. In sleep, he didn't look like a monster. He looked like a man who had been carrying the weight of the world and had finally set it down. I moved slightly, trying to slide out from under his arm. His grip tightened instantly. "Stay," he grumbled, his voice a vibration against my spine. He didn't even open his eyes. "I can't," I whispered, panic fluttering in my throat. "The sun is up. If anyone finds me here, if your sister finds me here." Kaelen's eyes snapped open. The blue was piercing, clearing of sleep in a heartbeat. The mention of his sister seemed to sour the air instantly. He released me and sat up, the furs pooling at his waist. The loss of his body heat was a physical blow. The cold rushed back into the space between us, and I shivered. "Lyra," Kaelen said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. He looked at me, his gaze sweeping over my rumpled tunic and messy hair. "Yes, you must go meet your bride." He stood up, unashamed of his nakedness, and walked to the wash basin. I quickly averted my eyes, face burning, and scrambled out of the bed. "Does she know?" I asked, pulling my boots on with shaking fingers. "About the curse? About how I help it?" Kaelen splashed freezing water onto his face. "No one knows about the pain I am in, Elian. To show weakness in the north is to invite death, and you will not tell her." He turned, water dripping from his chin. He stalked toward me, boxing me in against the bedpost. "You will not tell her that you spent the night in my bed," he commanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You will not tell her that your magic sings for mine. You will play the part of the dutiful southern prince." "I intend to," I said, trying to summon some royal dignity despite being dwarfed by him. "I am here to do my duty." Kaelen's jaw tightened. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of my lower lip. The spark was there again, that magnetic pull that made my knees weak. "Duty," he mocked. "We shall see how long duty keeps you warm." Chapter 5. The Bride in White. I was escorted back to my tower room to change, then summoned to the Great Hall. The hall was a cavernous space of gray stone and ice sculptures that never melted. At the head of the room, on a dais raised above the rest, sat the Council of Elders. And her. Lady Lyra. She was undeniable. She sat on a throne of white wood, wearing a gown of pale blue silk that seemed to shimmer like a glacier. She had Kaelen's black hair, but her skin was the color of milk. She was beautiful, sharp, and terrifyingly still. I walked the length of the hall, feeling the eyes of 100 northern warriors on me. I felt small. I felt colorful and out of place in my gold-embroidered coat. I reached the dais and bowed low. "Lady Lyra," I said, my voice echoing in the silence. "I am Prince Elian. I am honored to meet you." She stood up. She was tall, taller than me. She glided down the steps, her movements fluid and silent. She stopped inches from me. Up close, her eyes were the same blue as Kaelen's. But where his were a raging ocean, hers were a frozen pond, dead, still. "So," she said. Her voice was light, airy, and completely devoid of emotion. "This is the price of peace." She reached out and took my hand. I braced myself for the spark. I braced myself for the rush of heat I felt with Kaelen. Nothing. Her skin was cold, dry and cold. My magic didn't flare. It didn't react. It stayed dormant, deep in my chest. "You are small," she observed, echoing her brother's first words. She dropped my hand as if bored. "And your magic is negligible. I can barely feel it." "It is sun magic, my lady," I said stiffly. "It is not meant for force. It is meant for life. Life has no place here, she said simply. Only survival. She turned to the elders. He will do. He is weak, but he carries the bloodline. The wedding will proceed in 2 days. She didn't ask me if I agreed. She didn't ask me my name. She treated me like a broodmare purchased at a market. "And where is the general?" an elder asked. "Here." The doors boomed open. Kaelen strode in. He was in full ceremonial armor now, a cape of black wolf fur billowing behind him. He looked like the god of war. The entire room seemed to shrink around him. He walked straight to the dais, ignoring the bowing soldiers. His eyes locked onto mine for a fraction of a second, burning, possessive, before snapping to his sister. "You are early, Lyra," Kaelen rumbled. "And you are late, brother," she replied coolly. "I have met my betrothed. He is quaint." Kaelen stepped between us. It was a subtle move, but effective. He physically blocked Lyra's view of me. "He is not a pet," Kaelen growled. "He is a prince." Lyra tilted her head, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips. "Defending him already? You usually despise the Southerners. Did you not say they were soft? Useless?" "I said he is a prince," Kaelen repeated, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "And he is under my protection until the vows are said." "Of course," Lyra said dismissively. "Do what you want with him until the wedding. Just ensure he is unblemished for the bedding ceremony." She turned and walked away, her train trailing over the stone floor like a snake. I stood there, feeling sick. The bedding ceremony. Kaelen turned to me. The anger radiating off him was palpable. "Come," he ordered. "Where?" "Away from her." Chapter 6. The Training Grounds. Kaelen dragged me, politely but firmly, to the training grounds. It was an open-air courtyard surrounded by high walls where soldiers sparred with blunted steel. "Why are we here?" I asked, hugging my arms against the biting wind. "If you are to live here, you need to learn to defend yourself," Kaelen said. He threw a wooden practice sword at me. I fumbled and barely caught it. "I am a mage, not a warrior." "You are a mage with no fire," Kaelen countered, drawing his own wooden blade. "And in 2 days, you will be the husband of the Ice Maiden. Do you think she will protect you? She will eat you alive, Elian." He lunged. I yelped and scrambled back, parrying clumsily. The wood clacked loud and sharp. "Faster!" Kaelen roared, swinging again. He drove me back, strike after strike. I was panting, sweating, slipping on the ice. He was relentless. He wasn't hurting me, but he was overwhelming me. "Is this how you fight?" he taunted, locking his blade with mine and pushing down, forcing me to my knees. "Is this how you will fight for your life?" "I am trying," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "Try harder." He shoved me back. I lost my footing on a patch of ice and fell hard onto my back. The wooden sword skittered away. I lay there, gasping for air, staring up at the gray sky. A shadow fell over me. Kaelen stood above me, legs apart, chest heaving. "Get up," he said. "No." I glared at him. "I am done. You are just bullying me because you're angry." "Angry?" Kaelen dropped his sword and dropped to his knees, straddling my hips. I froze. We were in the middle of the courtyard. Soldiers were watching. But Kaelen didn't seem to care. "You think I am angry?" he hissed, leaning down until his nose brushed mine. "I am terrified, you foolish little son." "Terrified of what?" "Of you," he whispered. "Of what happens when you say those vows." He reached out, his hand gripping my shoulder. The heat flared between us, violent and sudden. It melted the snow beneath my back. "I felt it," he said, his voice ragged. "When you touched her. I watched. I waited for the light. I waited for you to look at her the way you looked at me this morning." "There was nothing," I admitted breathlessly. "She is She is cold. She is the void, Kaelen said fiercely. She takes. She never gives. If you bond your life to hers, Elian, she will drain you dry. She will extinguish this. He tapped my chest, right over my heart. She will put out your light. I have no choice, Kaelen. It is a treaty. Screw the treaty, he growled. He looked at my mouth. His gaze was hungry, dark, and desperate. For a second, I thought he was going to kiss me right there, in front of his army. I wanted him to. God help me, I wanted him to claim me and ruin everything. General! A soldier ran up, stopping abruptly when he saw the compromising position. He cleared his throat loudly, looking at the ground. General, the council requests the prince's presence for the fitting of the wedding garb. Kaelen froze. The reality of the world crashed back in. He closed his eyes for a second, a look of profound pain crossing his face. Then, the mask returned. He stood up and offered me a hand. Go, he said, his voice flat. Go prepare for your wedding. Chapter 7. The Sabotage. The night before the wedding was a celebration. A feast, they called it. I sat at the high table next to Lyra. She ignored me, speaking only to the elders. I drank too much northern wine, trying to numb the dread in my stomach. Across the room, Kaelen sat in the shadows. He wasn't drinking. He was watching. His eyes never left me. Every time a servant refilled Lyra's goblet, Kaelen's eyes tracked the movement. Every time Lyra leaned in to whisper something cold in my ear, Kaelen's hand clenched around the hilt of his dagger. The tension in the air was so thick it felt like static electricity. Tomorrow, Lyra said, turning to me suddenly. Her eyes gleamed with a strange light. We will bind our cores, my ice and your sun. Yes, I murmured. It will hurt, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The merging of opposites is violent. Most don't survive the first hour of the bonding without screaming. I swallowed hard. But do not worry, she continued, running a cold fingernail down my wrist. I will enjoy breaking you. I jerked my hand back. Across the room, a chair scraped loudly against the stone. Kaelen stood up. The hall went silent. The prince looks tired, Kaelen announced, his voice booming. He should rest before the ceremony. He is fine, Lyra snapped. Sit down, brother. He is shaking, Kaelen argued, walking around the table. He moved like a predator stalking prey. He stopped behind my chair. I am taking him to his chambers. You overstep your bounds, General. Lyra stood up, her voice rising. He is my betrothed. And he is under my roof, Kaelen roared. The sound shook the dust from the rafters. And I say the feast is over. He didn't wait for permission. He grabbed my arm and hauled me out of the chair. Kaelen, what are you doing? I hissed as he dragged me out of the hall, ignoring the gasps of the court. Saving you, he muttered. He didn't take me to the tower. He didn't take me to the guest wing. He took me out the side door into the biting wind of the battlements. He pulled me into the shadows of a guard tower, slamming me against the stone wall. You cannot marry her, he breathed, pinning me with his body. I have to. No. He grabbed my face in both hands. The heat was searing now, burning through the cold of the night. Do you not understand? She doesn't just want your title. She wants your core. She is a leech, Elian. She will feed on your magic until you are a husk. Why do you care? I cried, tears stinging my eyes. You hated me yesterday. I don't hate you, Kaelen shouted back. I crave you. The silence that followed was louder than the wind. Kaelen looked shocked by his own admission. He stared at me, his chest heaving. I am freezing, Elian, he whispered, his voice breaking. Every moment of my life has been pain, until you. You are the only warmth I have ever known. If she takes you, if she kills you, I will burn this world to the ground. Kaelen, I won't let her touch you, he vowed. He leaned his forehead against mine. I am going to steal you. Steal me? Tonight, he said darky. We leave. There's a cabin in the Frostwood. She cannot find us there. That is treason, I whispered, trembling. That is war. Kaelen pulled back, looking deep into my eyes. Then let it be war. He didn't give me a chance to argue. He leaned down and captured my lips. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was fire and ice clashing, desperate and hungry. His mouth was demanding, his tongue hot, his stubble grazing my skin. I should have pushed him away. I should have slapped him and run back to my fiancée. Instead, I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him back. The magic in my chest exploded, wrapping around us like a shield, melting the snow at our feet. We were enemies. We were forbidden. And we were absolutely, undeniably inevitable. Chapter 8. The Shadow Wolf. The kiss broke not because we wanted it to, but because the alarm bells began to ring. Deep inside the fortress, a horn blasted, a low, mournful sound that echoed off the mountains. She knows, Kaelen growled against my lips. He pulled back, his eyes wild and dilated. She knows you are gone from the feast. What do we do? I asked, breathless, my hands still clutching the fur of his cloak. We run. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He grabbed my hand and pulled me along the battlements, running toward the beast stables. The wind was picking up, screaming around the stone towers, but Kaelen moved with the certainty of a man on his own territory. We burst into the stables. The smell of hay and musk hit me. But these weren't horses. Gods, I whispered. Huge timber-black wolves paced in iron-reinforced stalls. They were the size of ponies, their eyes glowing yellow in the dark. Kaelen went to the largest one, a beast with a scar across its snout that matched Kaelen's own. He didn't bother with a saddle. He threw open the gate and vaulted onto the wolf's back, gripping the thick fur at its neck. He reached down, his arm extended. Trust me, Elian, he said. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. I looked at the door where guards would be bursting through any second. I looked at the terrifying wolf. Then I looked at Kaelen, the man who had looked at me with hunger instead of contempt. I took his hand. He hauled me up effortlessly, settling me in front of him. I straddled the wolf, my back pressed against Kaelen's chest. His arms came around me, locking me in a cage of muscle and iron. Hold on, he warned. He whistled. The wolf lunged. We didn't go through the gate. We went over the wall. The beast leaped with supernatural strength, landing in the deep snow outside the fortress with a bone-jarring thud. Then it began to run. The speed was blinding. The world blurred into streaks of white and gray. The cold was absolute, a physical weight trying to crush the life out of me. I buried my face in Kaelen's cloak, squeezing my eyes shut. I have you, Kaelen roared over the wind. He bent low over me, shielding my smaller body with his own. I could feel him using his magic. He was pulling the cold away from me, absorbing the freezing wind into his own body to create a pocket of still air around us. Kaelen, stop, I shouted, realizing what he was doing. You're absorbing too much. It will hurt you. Better me than you, he gritted out. We rode for what felt like hours, deep into the forbidden frostwood, where the trees were as thick as towers, and the snow was untouched by man. Chapter 9. The Sanctuary. The cabin was invisible until we were right on top of it. It was half buried in a snowdrift, built of heavy logs and hidden beneath the boughs of ancient pines. The wolf skidded to a halt. Kaelen slid off first, his legs hitting the snow heavily. He staggered. Kaelen? I scrambled down. He was leaning against the wolf's flank, his breath coming in ragged white puffs. His skin was terrifyingly pale, even for him. Frost was patterning his skin, creeping up his neck like a living tattoo. The ride, he wheezed, took too much. He had shielded me from a blizzard for 3 hours. He was freezing to death from the inside out. Inside, now, I ordered, fear spiking in my chest. I shouldered his weight. He was heavy, massive, but he let me guide him. We stumbled into the cabin. It was a single room, a hunter's hideout. There was a stone hearth, a pile of dry wood, and a bed frame filled with evergreen boughs and furs. I dumped him onto the furs and scrambled to the fireplace. Thank the gods for my faint magic. I didn't need flint. I focused on the dry moss, pushed a pulse of heat from my palm, and the fire roared to life. I turned back to Kaelen. He was shaking, violent, body-racking tremors. His eyes were rolled back, showing the whites. Kaelen! I crawled onto the bed, grabbing his face. His skin was like touching dry ice. It burned my fingers. Cold, he moaned, delirious. So cold. I know, I'm here. I started stripping his armor. The iron breastplate, the heavy pauldrons, they were all acting like ice packs, trapping the cold against him. I threw them onto the floor with a clang. I unlaced his boots, tore open his shirt. He was ice cold to the touch everywhere. The frost patterns on his skin were spreading, jagged blue lines moving toward his heart. The fire isn't enough, I whispered, panic rising. Kaelen, look at me. He blinked, his blue eyes unfocused. Elian, run. If I freeze over, I will shatter. I am not running. I made a choice. I stood up and pulled my tunic over my head, then my undershirt. I kicked off my boots and trousers until I was standing shivering in the firelight, wearing nothing. I climbed back onto the furs. No, Kaelen groaned, trying to push me away with a weak hand. You'll freeze. Shut up, Warlord, I whispered. I straddled his hips. I lowered myself onto him, pressing my chest to his, my stomach to his, my legs tangling with his. The contact was explosive. Chapter 10. The Thaw. It hurt at first. He was so cold it felt like lying on a slab of marble. I gasped, tears springing to my eyes, but I didn't pull away. I pushed down. Take it, I commanded, closing my eyes and visualizing the sun. Take the heat, Kaelen. My magic responded to his need with a violence I had never felt before. It didn't just trickle, it poured. My skin began to glow with a faint golden light. Kaelen arched his back, a guttural roar tearing from his throat. The frost on his skin began to retreat. Steam actually rose from where our bodies touched, curling around us in the firelight. Elian? His voice was stronger now, laced with awe and something darker. He wrapped his arms around me. The desperation in his grip was bruising. He wasn't pushing me away anymore. He was crushing me against him, trying to merge our bodies into one. More, he growled. I need more. I'm here. Take it all. He flipped us. Suddenly, I was on my back in the furs, and Kaelen was looming over me. The frost was gone from his face, replaced by a flush of heat. His eyes were no longer hazy. They were sharp, predatory, and burning with intent. You saved me, he whispered, his hand sliding down my side, tracing the curve of my waist. His fingers were warm now. You foolish, beautiful boy. I'm not a boy, I breathed, my heart hammering against my ribs as I looked up at him. I am the man who just saved your life. Kaelen smirked, a true, wicked smirk that did things to my insides. So you are. He leaned down and kissed me. This wasn't the desperate, hurried kiss on the battlements. This was slow. It was thorough. He kissed me like he had all the time in the world, and like he intended to taste every inch of me. His mouth moved over mine, hot and wet. His tongue teased my lips apart, deepening the kiss until I was dizzy with it. My hands tangled in his thick, dark hair, pulling him closer. "You are so hot," Kaelen murmured against my throat, trailing kisses down my jawline. "You burn, Elian. You burn like a star. And you are melting," I teased weakly. "For you. Only for you." He shifted, his knee nudging my legs apart. The weight of him settled between my thighs. It felt right. It felt like the missing piece of a puzzle finally snapping into place. The magic swirling around us changed. It wasn't just healing anymore. As his skin rubbed against mine, the magic began to bind. I felt a tug in my chest, a golden thread spinning out, wrapping around Kaelen's icy core. "Do you feel that?" I gasped as his hand moved lower, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin of my inner thigh. "The bond," Kaelen rasped. He stopped, hovering over me, his eyes searching mine. "If we do this, if we finish this, the bond becomes permanent. You will be tied to the north, to me, forever." He waited. He was giving me an out. Even now, consumed by lust and the relief of being pain-free, he was giving me a choice. I looked at him. The scars, the strength, the hidden vulnerability. I thought of Lyra and her cold, dead eyes. I thought of the empty palaces in the south. I reached up and cupped his face. "I don't want to go back," I whispered. "I want to burn with you." Kaelen let out a sound that was half prayer, half growl. "He brings the spring," the tribal elder whispered, dropping his spear to kneel. Kaelen stepped forward, his hand resting heavily, proudly on my shoulder. "He brings life," Kaelen corrected, his voice carrying over the wind. "The council in the fortress would let you freeze to feed their own power. My sister hoards the magic for herself. But Elian..." He looked down at me, his eyes softening in a way that made my chest ache. "Elian shares it." "Will you fight for him?" Kaelen roared, drawing his black iron sword. "Will you fight for the thaw?" A cheer went up, a guttural, deafening roar that shook the snow from the trees. I looked at Kaelen. He looked exhausted, but alive. The bond between us was a humming wire, constantly feeding him warmth, keeping the frost curse at bay. "Then you are mine." He closed the distance. The night blurred into a haze of firelight and sensation. There was no cold in the cabin anymore. There was only the friction of skin, the tangle of limbs, and the sweet, heavy rhythm of two enemies becoming lovers. Every time he touched me, sparks of gold and blue light danced across our skin. When we finally found our release, crashing together in the tangled furs, the magic flared so bright it lit up the windows of the cabin like a sunrise in the middle of the night. I fell asleep wrapped in his arms, warm, safe, and irrevocably bound to the Warlord of the Frost. Chapter 11. The golden cage morning came too soon. The fire had died down to embers, but the bed was still warm. I woke up draped over Kaelen's chest. He was already awake, one arm behind his head, the other absent-mindedly playing with my hair. I shifted, my body aching in a very pleasant way. Memories of the night before flooded back, and I hid my face in his neck to hide my blush. "Don't hide," Kaelen rumbled, his chest vibrating. "It's a little late for modesty, Prince." I swatted his chest. "I am not hiding, I am resting." Kaelen chuckled, a deep, rich sound I had never heard before. He kissed the top of my head. "We have a problem, Elian." I lifted my head, sobering instantly. "Lyra." "Lyra," he agreed. His face hardened. "She will have sensed the bond snapping into place. She knows I have taken you. She knows I have stolen her magic source." "What will she do?" Kaelen sat up, the furs falling to his waist. He looked at the door of the cabin. "She will hunt us. She has the guard. She has the sorcerers. and she has a claim to the throne that is stronger than mine." He turned to me, his expression serious. "We cannot stay here. This cabin is a temporary shelter. If we stay, she surrounds us and burns us out." "So we keep running?" I asked. "No." Kaelen stood up and began gathering his armor. He looked at the pieces of black iron, then looked back at me, lying in his bed, marked by his touch. "We stop running," Kaelen said, his voice turning cold and sharp, the voice of the general returning. "We go to the deep north, to the tribes. They hate the council. They hate my sister." He walked back to the bed and leaned down, placing a hand on either side of my hips. "I am going to start a civil war, Elian. I am going to overthrow her, and I'm going to put you on the throne beside me." My eyes widened. "Me? A southern prince on the northern throne?" "You are not just a southern prince anymore," Kaelen said fiercely. He took my hand and pressed it against his chest, right over his heart. I could feel the hum of my own magic echoing inside him. "You are the Warlord's heart. Where I go, you go. What I rule, you rule." He kissed me hard, a promise of violence and devotion. "Get dressed, my love. The honeymoon is over. The war begins now." Chapter 12. The Army of the Exiled. The deep north was a place where even shadows froze. But for the first time in history, a fire burned in the center of the tribe lands. I stood by the campfire, my hands extended. I wasn't fighting the cold anymore. I was commanding it to step back. A circle of melted earth surrounded me, green grass sprouting miraculously from the permafrost. Around me, hundreds of tribal warriors, men and women clad in white bear furs and bone armor, watched in silence. They looked from the grass to me, and then to the massive man standing at my shoulder. "Are you ready?" he asked me quietly, ignoring the cheering crowd. "To invade a fortress, fight a sorceress, and commit treason?" I smiled shakily. "I suppose I have to be. I'm already wearing the traitor's cloak." Kaelen smirked, adjusting the heavy fur cloak he had draped over my shoulders. "You are wearing my cloak, Elian, and soon you will be wearing my crown." He leaned in and kissed me, brief, hard, and promising violence to anyone who tried to stop us. "Let's go take our home back." Chapter 13. The Siege of Ice. We didn't sneak in. We didn't use the secret tunnels. We marched to the front gates. The tribal army spread out across the white plains, a sea of spears and torches. The Warlord's fortress loomed ahead, dark and silent. On the high ramparts, I could see figures moving. Archers, mages. Kaelen stood at the front, with me by his side. The wolf he rode was growling, sensing the magic in the air. "Lyra!" Kaelen bellowed. His voice was magically amplified, booming against the stone walls. "Open the gates, surrender, and I will spare your life." A figure appeared on the balcony above the gate. It was Lyra. She wore a crown of jagged ice, and her dress seemed woven from the blizzard itself. She looked down at us with a sneer of pure contempt. "You return?" she called down, her voice thin and sharp like breaking glass. "With a pack of savages and your stolen pet?" "He is my husband," Kaelen shouted back, "in the eyes of the old gods and the bond of magic." "He is a battery," Lyra spat, "and I will drain him dry." She raised her hands. The sky turned black. Clouds swirled unnaturally fast, forming a funnel directly over us. "Shields!" Kaelen roared. Lyra unleashed the storm. Thousands of ice shards, sharp as daggers, rained down from the sky. It was a massacre waiting to happen. "Elian, now!" Kaelen yelled, grabbing my hand. I didn't need to be told. I closed my eyes and reached for the core of my magic, that small sun that had always been too weak for the southern courts. But here, in the land of shadow, it was the only light that mattered. I didn't push the heat at Kaelen. I pushed it up. "Burn," I commanded, A dome of golden light exploded from my body. It expanded outward, covering Kaelen, covering the wolf, covering the front line of the army. The ice shards hit the golden shield and evaporated instantly into harmless steam. The army cheered. Kaelen looked at me, pride blazing in his eyes. "Break the gate," he ordered. The tribal giants rushed forward with a battering ram made of ironwood. Boom, boom. The gates groaned. Lyra screamed in frustration from the wall. She hurled bolts of blue freezing magic at the ram. But every time she struck, I threw a counterpulse of heat, melting her attacks before they could land. With a final shattering crack, the gates gave way. Charge. Chapter 14. The Heart of the Storm. The battle in the courtyard was chaos. Steel clashed against steel, fire against ice. Kaelen was a whirlwind of destruction. He carved a path through the loyalist guards, his black sword moving faster than the eye could follow. I stayed close to his back, wielding a short sword he had taught me to use, but mostly using my magic to blind enemies and keep Kaelen warm. We fought our way into the great hall. It was empty, save for Lyra. She stood on the dais, surrounded by the terrified council elders. "It ends, Lyra," Kaelen said, stepping over the body of a guard. He was breathing hard, blood, not his own, splattered across his cheek. "Does it?" Lyra smiled. It was a terrible, broken smile. "You think because you warmed your bed with him, you understand power? The curse is not just pain, brother. It is power." She slammed her staff onto the stone floor. The temperature in the room plummeted to absolute zero. The torches went out, the windows cracked. Frost raced across the floor, seizing Kaelen's boots. Kaelen grunted, falling to one knee. The cold was attacking his internal curse, resonating with it. He clutched his chest, gasping. "Kaelen?" I reached for him. "No!" Lyra flicked her hand. A wall of wind slammed into me, throwing me across the room. I hit a pillar and slid to the floor, dazed. "He's already broken," Lyra said, walking slowly toward Kaelen. "The frost is in his blood. All I have to do is tell it to stop flowing." Kaelen roared in agony as his skin began to turn blue. He couldn't move. He was freezing from the inside out, paralyzed by his own sister's magic. "And you," Lyra turned her dead eyes to me. "You are just a candle in a hurricane." She raised an ice spear, aiming it at Kaelen's heart. "Say goodbye to your warlord." Something snapped inside me. I wasn't just Prince Elian of the Sunlands. I wasn't just a tribute. I was the man who had tamed the frost. I was the man who loved the monster. "Get away from him!" I screamed. I didn't use a spell. I didn't use technique. I simply tore open the floodgates of my soul. I poured every ounce of my life force into the bond, the golden thread that connected my heart to Kaelen's. "Wake up!" I screamed silently into his mind. "Burn with me." Kaelen's eyes flew open. They weren't blue anymore. They were gold. He grabbed the ice spear with his bare hand just as Lyra thrust it down. Lyra gasped. Impossible. The spear melted in Kaelen's grip, water running down his arm. He stood up, the frost on his skin shattering like glass. He was glowing, radiating the heat I was feeding him. "You forgot one thing, sister," Kaelen growled. He took a step forward. The ice on the floor turned to water. "He is not a candle," Kaelen said, his voice overlapping with mine, a dual tone of power. "He is the sun." Kaelen lunged. Lyra tried to throw up a shield, but Kaelen punched right through it. He didn't use his sword. He grabbed her by the throat and lifted her off the ground. But he didn't kill her. "I will not be a butcher like you," Kaelen spat. He placed his other hand on her forehead. "I strip you." He drew the cold out of her. He absorbed her magic into himself, and then funneled it through our bond, where my sun magic burned it away into nothingness. Lyra shrieked as her power vanished. Her ice crown melted. She went limp in his grasp. Kaelen dropped her. She collapsed on the steps of the throne, gasping, human, and powerless. "Take her away," Kaelen commanded the tribal warriors who had burst into the hall. "Exile. If she returns to the north, she dies." The hall fell silent. Kaelen turned slowly. The golden glow faded from his eyes, returning to their deep ocean blue. He looked at me across the room. I was slumped against the pillar, exhausted, my vision blurring. "Elian." He was there in a heartbeat. He scooped me up into his arms, holding me tight against his chest. "I've got you," he whispered frantically, checking my pulse. "Stay with me. You used too much." "I'm okay," I whispered, leaning my head against his shoulder. "Just chilly." Kaelen laughed, a sound of pure relief. "I can fix that." He kissed my forehead, then stood up, holding me bridal style. He turned to the council, to the army, to the watching north. "Behold," Kaelen's voice rang out, "Prince Elian, the Warlord's consort, the savior of the north." They knelt, every single one of them. Chapter 15. The Warmth of Winter. Epilogue. 3 months later. The Warlord's keep had changed. It was still made of black stone, and the wind still howled outside, but inside there were rugs. There were tapestries. There were fires roaring in every hearth. And in the center of the courtyard, a garden was growing. A small patch of defying greenery kept alive by the ambient magic of the new king. I stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, wrapped in a thick robe, watching the snow fall. It was peaceful now. The war was over. The tribes and the fortress were united. Arms wrapped around my waist from behind. A chin rested on my shoulder. "You should come back to bed," Kaelen rumbled, his voice low and seductive. "The council meeting isn't for another hour." I leaned back into him, soaking in his warmth. He wasn't cold anymore. With our bond permanent and settled, his body temperature had normalized. He was just a man. A very large, very strong, very possessive man. "I was just thinking," I said softly. "About what?" He kissed the sensitive spot behind my ear. "About when I arrived," I said. "I thought I was coming here to die. I thought you were a monster who would eat my heart." Kaelen turned me around in his arms. He looked healthy, the dark circles gone from under his eyes, the tension gone from his brow. "I did eat your heart," he smirked. "And you ate mine." He lifted my hand and kissed my ring finger, where a band of black iron and gold sat, the symbol of our dual rule. "You saved me, Elian," he said, his voice turning serious. "Every day you save me." "And you protect me," I replied, reaching up to trace the scar on his lip. "Always." He picked me up effortlessly, as he loved to do, carrying me back toward the massive bed piled high with furs. No longer for survival, but for comfort. "Now," Kaelen growled playfully, throwing me onto the soft mattress and climbing over me. "I believe as High King, I can decree that the morning meeting is cancelled." "Is that a royal order?" I laughed, pulling him down by his collar. "That," Kaelen whispered before sealing his mouth over mine, "is a promise." Outside, the snow continued to fall on the frozen north. But inside the Warlord's keep, it was summer, and it was golden, and it was full of love.